What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Sacred Sunday to you. I want to welcome all of the people watching on Facebook. A big thank you to John and Raymer. They put us out to over 100 Facebook groups and pages through the Sign Network. So most of you are watching this that way. But I also want to welcome those of you who are watching on our new broadcast partner, Conscious Awakening Network, and of course, those who are watching on Alan Steinfeld's YouTube channel. Welcome, everybody. And of course, a welcome to Eleanor, George, Kiki, and everybody else coming into the Zoom room. We have a really important topic today, and that is overcoming religious trauma, or some of the maybe dogma, or even disillusionments that may have taken place in our spiritual life, especially in our early spiritual life. It's pretty common. And we have two wonderful guest speakers, Reverend Temple Hayes, who you've seen on the show before, and a new friend, Andrew Jacko, coming to us all the way from UK. We also have Omashar with us, who of course will provide some music. And beloved Fanny Starchild is going to provide some beautiful harp for us today. So it's going to be a lovely show, and we want to really get interaction with all of you. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook, or on Conscious Awakening Network or on YouTube, come on into our Zoom room. It's easier for us to get your thoughts, your comments, and to interact with you. And it's really easy to come on in. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com, and you'll see where it says register for the winter season here. And you click that little link, and it'll open up and take you to the registration page. You know, we do 3 or more shows every week. So, for example, on Friday night, these are some of the guests that we had with us. And then on last time, we had a beautiful, beautiful show talking all about living life in a committed way with Lynn Twist and Shakti Durga and wonderful, wonderful guests. And then here's today's show. And when you register, you're going to get the links to all of our shows for the rest of December, all of January, all of February, and all of March. That's right. You're going to get all the links for 3+ months, taking us all the way through until spring. So join us. The Global Peace Tribe, for any of you who don't know, we are always providing shows that are inspirational and informational. Tackling topics that are relevant to all of us, all about helping us to awaken. And we have a wonderful, wonderful group of ever-growing friends from all over the world, including the luminaries who come and present. And of course, it's great to see a lot of our friends that are coming into the Zoom room. Let us know where you are geographically today. And I'm going to start us off with a brief meditation, and then we'll go right into Fanny playing some harp. So we're really blessed to have Fanny with us today. So let's just start by closing our eyes, unless you're listening to the audio recording of this and driving a motor vehicle. In that case, don't close your eyes. But I do want to, and Omashar, maybe keep your eyes open so you can let people in as they're coming into the Zoom room. Thank you. All right, so let's just start, as always, with the breath. Taking deep, conscious breaths. Breathing at your own pace, but being conscious and making them a little bit more deep, a little bit more intentional. And allowing my voice to just gently guide you. And as you're breathing in and out, I invite you to contemplate what is your relationship to that which has an infinite number of names: God, higher self, life, the universe, Holy Spirit, whatever you like to call it. What is your relationship to, I like to call it, the eternal beloved? And as you think about your relationship to that, what are some of the discoveries that you've made in order to strengthen or even experience that connection? For some of us, it's been through meditation or yoga. For some, it's been through plant medicine or psychedelics. For some, it's been a hardship, something that took place that broke our heart open, and a greater faith, a greater understanding came into us. And I also, especially given today's theme, has there been, maybe earlier in your life, a disillusionment with religion or a dogma? Maybe a belief that you were raised with that as you grew older and more mature, realized that there were flaws in that belief or flaws in that church or that organization. And that can be very, very devastating. It can create a lot of trauma. How has your relationship to God changed, evolved over the years? We all have our own unique journey coming into greater awakening in this awakening world. And there's no right or wrong journey. There are some journeys that are very difficult, very challenging. Over that, we have empathy and compassion. So I invite you to continue to reflect on your journey of awakening, of consciousness, as we listen to the beautiful sounds of Fanny and her harp. That is so beautiful, Fanny. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hmm. Let's just continue to breathe for a moment. Just honoring each person's unique journey. And I see a lot of beautiful friends in our Zoom room. Definitely want to hear from some of you today. So please pop into the chat box. Any thoughts, comments, things that you'd like to share? And I'm going to introduce our very, very special guest. This is Andrew Jacko coming to us from UK. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, Scott. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here.
Well, Andrew's actual website is called lifeafterdogma.org. So he is the perfect person for this topic. And he's a former Princeton seminary educated minister who left his religious faith and community because of what he experienced as severe psychological trauma. And after years of healing his own trauma, he now works in helping others heal their religious trauma. So thank you very much for the incredibly important work that you're doing, Andrew. And I'd love to just invite you to start by maybe sharing a little bit about your story and your background with us.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing awareness to this important issue that I'm sure many of us have some personal experience with. So for me, it was a really big part of my upbringing. I was raised in an Assemblies of God, Pentecostal, evangelical, fundamentalist church. A lot of labels there. But it was all of those things. And my father is a minister. He started the church a little bit after I was born. So they took me straight from the hospital to the church altar to devote me to a life of service to God as they understood God. And so I was raised in this really thriving, missionary oriented, heavily evangelistic church community. And we went to church multiple times a week. And it was really emphasized that our religious beliefs, which we saw as just the way the world works and the way the world and the universe is the most fundamental part of who we were as human beings and the essence of life, that we were to be really fully devoted to God as we understood God and Jesus through the Bible, through our interpretation of the Bible, and to saving souls, to saving people from hell, because we really, really believed that everyone who didn't believe in our idea of Jesus was going to hell, and that therefore the most important thing you could do is evangelize and convert people, because in that worldview, that's what compassion is to convert people to your way of thinking, your understanding of spirituality, because otherwise they're going to suffer this unimaginably horrible fate. So I remember as a little kid, as a 5-year-old kid, just being subject to these really gruesome portrayals of hell, watching these evangelistic dramas in my church and different videos, and hearing these sermons about how if I didn't confess my sins, I might end up dying at any moment and going to hell. And this kind of an urgency and the really heightened level of fear and paranoia was reinforced constantly in the teaching. And so while there is this message on the one hand of unconditional love and acceptance and grace, on the other hand, it was constantly mixed with fear and judgment and shame. And so we were getting these dual messages at the same time. And but I thought that was just the way that things were. That was the way that God was. And, so I went along with it. And So I grew up in this church. I ended up going to a school called Wheaton College, which is an evangelical Christian school out in Illinois, to study Bible and ministry. And I ended up taking a missionary trip to India in my sophomore year of college. And when I got there, I just knew this is the place for me. This is where I'm going to go to be a missionary, to convert Hindus and Muslims to Christianity, because we believe that when every distinct ethno-linguistic people group received the gospel, had an indigenous church, that Jesus was going to come back in the second coming. And so we were on this urgent mission to save the world and convert people. And I was going to India because there's a lot of people there who hadn't received the gospel yet. And so I was really, really passionate about this sense of call that I had to serve and to be a missionary and a minister. And then I went to Princeton Seminary, learned Biblical Greek and Hebrew, and was going to go do this big thing. And at that time, I ended up having a rude awakening. I found that I was very, very anxious, depressed, really tormented about my sexuality, and I didn't understand why or what was happening to me. I thought it was just my own mental health issues. And, there was some of that as well, which can be even more confusing when there's this confluence. You have your own trauma and your own whole mix of things going on. But I could never suspect that some of the problem was due to my religious beliefs, because we were taught that this religious system is perfect, it's infallible, it's the word of God. And so if there's something wrong in your life, it's because of you're sinning, or you don't have enough faith, or you're just not trying hard enough, or maybe it's just like mysteriously God is withholding his divine presence and it's the dark night of the soul and you're being tested. So you better try harder. You better, dive in deeper into the belief system. And that's how you're going to come out of this thing intact. But what I found was that when I really committed to healing myself, and I was just desperate to be free of fear and to be healthier, I found that a lot of the reason I was suffering was because of my religious beliefs, what I had been taught. And that was a very tough pill to swallow, because my whole identity, my whole community, my vocation, really everything had been wrapped up in this worldview, this belief system. It was in some ways a total identity system. So really, I tried harder. I tried to make it work. I tried different versions of the religion, more progressive versions, which works for a lot of people, but it didn't work for me. And so I ended up leaving and becoming an atheist and jettisoning spirituality entirely. And because the people who were addressing religious trauma, who I knew about and who were calling out abuses within religions, happened to be atheists. And a lot of times people who were spiritual tended to be a little bit, I guess, friendlier towards that religion, or to not be as vocal about some of the abuses that were going on. And I think with a good motive, wanting to be tolerant and accepting and inviting. But that was sort of some of the backlash. And so then I had this whole, what I now consider to be a whole other kind of indoctrination, which was a certain version of atheism that didn't have room for a lot of spiritual experiences that I only later had when I started working with psychedelics and meditation. And that was jarring for me as well, because at that point I didn't want anything to do with spirituality, because I had experienced so much abuse with spirituality. And I also saw a lot of spiritual people buying into very anti-scientific mentalities, and reminding me of a lot of the harms that I saw when I was religious, that some of these abuses happen in spiritual and not religious communities as well. So it was a long, long process and a long journey of healing. But then I also got a master's in counseling, and now I'm trained therapeutically and work as a coach and work with internal family systems. and work to raise awareness about some of the abuses that go on, and also to help people integrate spirituality in a way that works for them.
Already a lot of the people, both on Facebook and in our Zoom room, are talking about how they relate to your story and resonate with parts of it or all of it. So first of all, thank you for, again, being on our show and sharing your story with us. Curious, to what degree did you mention psychedelics? And honestly, I know a lot of the people in our Zoom room, at least, have used psychedelics. To what degree did psychedelics help you to awaken to what has become a part of your spirituality? And to what degree did they just add to the confusion?
That's a great question. I love that question. I would say both definitely happened. But I think they were really the primary impetus for me reintegrating spirituality, because actually I never had what I now consider to be a mystical experience in all the years that I was a Christian. I had a sense of intimacy with what I considered to be the divine, or kind of like a romantic feeling about my understanding of God at the time. But I came to question all those experiences, because a lot of it could have been manufactured by the emotional music and preaching,
Yeah.
and or just being suggestive, like, am I hearing God's voice really, or is this something I was taught in the Bible that I'm hearing, that's a voice in my head that I'm internalized? It was always really hard to tell whether I was just making it up, or it was being suggested to me, or whether I was actually having a genuine spiritual experience when I was a Christian. Again, in my personal experience, not saying that everyone has that experience, but when I worked with psychedelics, I was just like, oh, wow, there's actually something real here, and it's undeniable. And my current paradigm just doesn't fit what I'm seeing here. And, it really understanding for the first time that some of the visionary mystical experiences that I had heard about actually happen, and they're not just being made up. It's not just a superstitious kind of belief or practice or legend or myth. There's something real here. And so that really led me down this whole rabbit hole and awakening journey. But at the same time, it was confusing, and I think is confusing for a lot of people, because it also provoked some magical type thinking,
Mm.
and really like seeking for signs and synchronicities, and kind of looking outside of myself in different ways, or just getting confused, and not really necessarily knowing how to hold each experience, or again, to what extent my own psyche and projections and fantasies are playing into it, which I would say now that all of that goes on in psychedelic spaces. So it's something that I aspire to assist people with, is to really integrate spirituality with less confusion, because it
Mm.
can be very confusing.
Absolutely. Eleanor in our chat box just wrote, now, Andrew, your message is bringing me to tears. It feels like an egg is cracking open. This is good. An emotional egg, a golden egg. Um, uh, Thank you. I'm curious, what's your relationship now, having gone through your journey, to what we might call Jesus or the Christ? What's your personal relationship, if at all, to that being, that entity, that consciousness?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say one that for me is, I guess, kind of open-ended.
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure what to believe about it, but I'm open, I would say. So whether Christ is some kind of a consciousness or an entity that exists and can be interfaced with, I can't say that I've had that experience. I know a lot of people um, value that or view that as a reality.
Mhm.
So I mean, I can say that I resonate with a lot of things that Jesus said and represented for sure. But I leave that kind of open.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on. I really appreciate, you're still in the question about it, still in the query, which immediately gives me even extra additional respect for you. Um, you know, I happen to have had a personal experience when I was 21 for a very short period of time, experiencing Christ consciousness through me in a very profound way. Um, and of course, I was 21, so it was 45 years ago. And I've been in the question ever since, like, wow, what was that? What did that mean? And studying it, and it's an ongoing journey, isn't it? It's ultimately a great mystery. And it's so important for us to remain open and not get locked into a dogma or a belief system. Um, so one more question for you, then I want to watch a little bit of Temple, and then of course, we're going to be coming back and forth to you. Um, but my next question is, when you're working with someone who now associates spirituality with religion, and they've made a holy vow never to buy into religious dogma again, what are some first steps that you might support someone with to reopen to their own connection to spirit, separate from the veil of past pain from their religious dogmatic background?
Yeah, that's a great question and a very touchy subject too. A lot of people who are looking to heal from religious trauma are seeking explicitly secular therapists, so they'll only work with people who identify as atheists
Mhm.
for that reason that you mentioned. And so, as someone who's trained as a therapist and who operates as a coach because of international state licensing kinds of reasons, I respect the worldview of people and where they're currently at. So, I try not to kind of convert people to a spiritual opening or pressure. And I think that people can pick up on that too. But they do know my position because I'm out there and writing and speaking about it. So if they're signing up for it, they know where I come from. Uh, but I'm able to work within whatever worldview they have and wherever they're able to draw strength and inspiration from.
Mhm.
So that's one thing. And the other thing is that I think that, I try to encourage people to have healing experiences. So I think that most of the time, what ends up convincing people tends to at least have an experiential component at some point. I mean, it can be the case that people are just convinced by logical arguments, and that happens. And I think that's an important component of changing our understanding. But when it comes to being really strongly defended against something like spirituality or changing your worldview because of abuse or past experiences, then I think for those guards to come down, it tends to have to really touch people in a personal healing kind of a way that doesn't feel like someone else is putting it on them. So, something maybe like breath work or maybe psychedelics that people might be open to, and not because I'm pushing it on them because I want them to have a spiritual experience, but just because it's good for you or something that they might seek or see as good for themselves. And then if they start having these experiences and asking these questions, well, then we can go there.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you're on the show today. And I'm really appreciating just getting to know you. People are giving thumbs up.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to bring on my pre-record with Temple Hayes. I first met Temple when I gave a sermon at her church. She, at the time, Her church was in St. Petersburg, Florida. She's now a Unity Faith minister in Santa Barbara. But I have a lot of respect for her, and her story is fascinating. I think you'll enjoy it, Andrew, and I know our audience will as well. So I'm going to start the pre-record, and we'll listen to Temple for a few minutes, and then I'll come on back to you. Temple, thank you so much for being with us. And it was actually after knowing you for all these years and always admiring your work and how your life has flowed, that I learned about the extraordinary childhood that you had and how far you've come. And that actually inspired this entire show that we're doing today. And so I'd love to start by just asking you if you'd be willing to share the challenges that you grew up around religion and judgment, and how that impacted you as a child and as a teenager.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like you do, the stories that we continue to tell and to share are so, so very important for people listening at the right time and in the right way. I definitely know that I was born a mystic, and I would have been the kid that in India, they would have said, let's get you what you need, the support, the mystery school, the teachings, someone to support you, some guru, some master to work with your talents. I was born in a small town in South Carolina, outside of Greenville, about an hour and a half from Atlanta, Georgia, in the Bible Belt. And I would say, Scott, that I was the only metaphysical person in that entire area, and probably still am the only person metaphysically from that side of town. So that said, it was such a dichotomy, in that I would talk to God in nature. I was getting messages when I was 5, 6, 7. I'd tell mom that I got messages from God, that I had something to say to the world. I don't know if world was what I used at 5. I'm not sure. But I do know that I felt that. And I had all these conversations with the divine. And then I would be actually forced to go to the Baptist church, where my grandfather was deacon emeritus for 40 years, John Temple. And I would go to this church and I would hear that I was a sinner, that I was just a disgrace to God and all that. And not only me, but everybody. And even in 2022, I dare say that people still get dressed, go over, sit down in a pew, and live in this weary, wretched kind of consciousness and energy. And it blows me away that people will still take this kind of, it's abuse, really. It destroys the human spirit. Talk about if you want to live by a commandment that says, thou shalt not kill. Well, talk about killing the spirit of a little girl. So I was kind of just ho-hum about just surviving, making as little pot stirring, if you will, as needed to be, until my father walked into my bedroom unannounced and did not knock on the door, and myself and another girl, I was 13 and she was 17, and we were getting to know each other. And in a way that did not feel comfortable for him, let's just put it that way. We were dressed, but it was obvious. We had firecrackers going off, and my dad's like, oh my God. So the next thing I know, I'm going to my grandmother, and she's saying, I can't believe it, that my granddaughter is going to hell, and I won't get to live in heaven with you. I just absolutely can't believe that. This is disgusting. It's not okay. Can you imagine, you're 13 and you're like people's favorite, you're an athlete, you're like named after your grandfather, you're an heir to the kingdom. meaning consciousness of love and just innocence. And one day the shades go down. And from then on, for the majority of the rest of your life, when you enter a room, everything changes. And I didn't even have my I didn't even have my driver's permit then, and I'm having this conversation about going to hell. And it was heartbreaking, Scott, to know that I was listening to people that I was supposed to be able to trust for having my highest intent in regard, if you will, and yet they are the ones that turned on me the quickest. And so that story remained that story of silence and quiet. And through that rejection and abandonment, I wanted to lessen the pain. And so I went on a drinking spree that lasted 15 years. Now, by the grace of the universe, because there was another level, and this is where I've learned so much. And I use this practice now. There's my personality. There's my soul path. There's my personality. It's fun to be liked. It's fun to have your grandmother appreciate you. But there's my soul that knows that I am connected to spirit. And regardless of the crazy that my personality practiced, the number of drinks, the car accidents, the time I was committing a slow suicide, regardless of that, living in a life of hell, there was a wellness over here. All is well with my soul. There was something within me that knew that God created me for a reason. Okay. And so that part, because really with my personality, there's no explainable reason with accidents and all the things that I did to myself and my body that I am alive. I can't explain it. So that means that my soul had another agenda, right? And part of that has been to tell my story about life and to break out of that debris of, accepting I'm a pearl, and all that yuck, help create a stronger, more relatable, more empathetic person out of myself. But that there's no doubt about it. And I will tell you, I have not entered into a place such as that for 50 something years. And my childhood friend, his mother died, and I went to a funeral just for him. No other reason would I do that. And I sat there, and the beauty of that was that I am me. I am a God source. I am highly comfortable with who I am. I'm totally at home. I'm not homeless within my own understanding of who I am. And I'm able to observe. And there's the same conversation, the same songs, the same speech that they were giving when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. How is that even possible with evolving humanity? I mean, you cannot have from start to finish exactly the same. Well, you can, but that's the whole point of religiosity, isn't it? It clips the wings of human beings. It clips the wings of human beings. It disempowers a person. I mean, we even know, Scott, that we can go to Africa, we can be walking on the grounds, and we can yell and shout at a tree and call it bad names, and it will begin to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We know this. We know this. We've proven it. And yet how this is still going on is it's baffling to me, because it is a culture that accepts being less than dignified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. um, uh, Eleanor writes, Temple's message is coming through loud and clear, and more tears of resonance. Karen writes, Temple, you're a light to us all. And Jay writes, people need to take more psychedelics. Thank you for that, everybody. So as you hear Temple's story, Andrew, what comes up for you?
So much. She made so many great points. And yeah, I mean, we can break this thing down in a lot of different ways, but I think that this whole frame of mind, religious fundamentalism, is harmful and contains a lot of toxic ideologies and frankly abusive teachings. And that it's tragic too, because it does it in the name of good, and it takes people with the best intentions and can result in them doing a lot of things that are not becoming to, let's say, the name of something we would call divine. So there's a lot of different reasons for this. And I mean, I would say that really in this kind of religious system, frankly, a relationship with God looks like an abusive relationship. Just, it has all the hallmarks of an abusive relationship. I love you unconditionally, but I'll kill you and burn you forever if you leave me. I mean, what kind of person would say something like that? And yet that's what you have happening. You also have an us versus them mentality that's cultivated in any kind of a fundamentalist frameworks, where the chosen people of God versus the enemies of God, the children of the devil. And these are people who we have to simultaneously change to become like us, and also fear, because they might lead us astray and cause us to go to hell. And so really, there's so many different things that are abusive and harmful in this system that we could break down. The teachings on sexuality, in evangelical Christianity and in a lot of fundamentalist groups, it's taught that you're to repress your sexuality at the level of thought and emotion, and that you could be judged there. So God is really this voyeur who's obsessed with every single sexual act and fantasy and desire that we have, and is kind of looking to punish us, or to make us tame this untamable thing that's part of our essential human nature. And so in my childhood, I associated just having a sexual fantasy with burning in hell, because that's a connection that Jesus makes on the Sermon on the Mount, saying if you lust after a woman in your heart, you've committed adultery with her, and it's better for you to cut off a part of your body than for your whole body to burn in hell. I mean, so you have teachings like that, that are used and that are present in the Bible, because people view it as this perfect, infallible, divine set of teachings, and aren't able to see that it contains a lot of frankly harmful ideas, that it was written by people, and it contains some beautiful ideas too. But when we take it so literally, and think we have to believe all of it, then that's where you get into trouble. And additionally, though, this framework is ultimately based on a dualistic point of view, teaching that we're fundamentally separate from the divine or God. And so I think a lot of the problems stem from that, this idea of divine separation, so to speak, and that because of that, there's often a teaching of original sin, or total depravity, because our nature is separate from God's. So we're really depraved or wicked or sinful, and our sort of default state is eternal damnation or punishment or wretchedness, because of that. Whereas I would see it now in terms of something more like original or inherent goodness, that our nature is divine and pure, and essentially not separate from what you could call the divine or divine nature or spirit. And so any kind of disconnection we experience from that doesn't have to do with us being fundamentally better off. It has to do with us not being able to perceive that, or for certain kinds of traumas or woundings that have inhibited that connection, or distorted the way we view ourselves and other people. So it's just a so much more constructive and positive and life-affirming way to view people, even people who have done things that are awful,
Mhm.
to be able to see that with compassion, and to see ourselves with compassion when we do that. So I just threw a lot at you, but
You
there's so
did.
much we could say on this topic.
Well, and I'm appreciating everything you have to say. And yeah, I've made a few notes of things that I wanted to respond to. Pamela writes, I totally agree, Andrew. Have been so disillusioned with the discrepancies between religious dogma and just genuine, loving, compassionate words and actions that inspire unification, happiness, peace, and self-nurturing. I want to mention a few things. Jay, in one of his comments, talked about the original, if we really were reading the original books of the Bible, and the ones that got cut out when they, chose which books to put in, and, basically rewrote the Bible. And certainly I want to encourage anybody, if you haven't already, read the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas was one of the lost books of the Bible that was refound, I think, in 1947. Andrew Harvey, who's a frequent guest on the show, he was on Friday night, did a beautiful translation of the Gospel of Thomas. And it's just quotes from Jesus. It's no story, it's just quotes. And it is a very interesting picture of who Jesus may have actually been. Another thought, we've had Deepak Chopra on the show, and Deepak points out something that I love. When you, Andrew, were talking about going from this dualistic way of thinking, and kind of there's an older paradigm view of God as Jehovah, who's this angry God. And somebody needs to mute, because I'm hearing someone, sounds like almost humming in the background. So remember to keep yourselves muted, everybody. So we've gone from this angry Jehovah God and all of the dualistic evangelical, and we're going into remembering the oneness. And Deepak points out something quite wonderful. 7,000 years ago is when the ancient Vedic scriptures were written. And these are about the oldest sacred scriptures that have survived, that are not sitting in the basement of the Vatican somewhere. And the Vedic scriptures describe God as Brahman and assign 26 principles to Brahman. Now we fast forward 7,000 years to our most sophisticated form of science, which is quantum physics. And quantum physics has scientifically proven that we are living in a unified field of ever-changing molecules. And they have assigned that there are actually 26 principles of the unified field. And those 26 principles of the unified field that our quantum physicists have discovered or acknowledged perfectly correlate with the 26 definitions or principles of Brahman, God, written 7,000 years ago. Point being that our most ancient spiritual wisdom and our most modern science are saying the same thing from two different points of view, that we actually are just one ever-changing, extraordinarily interconnected experience. And so you can look at it from a spiritual point of view, you can look at it from having had a psychedelic or meditative experience of oneness, or you can just look at it from the field of quantum physics, that we really are moving out of this dualistic, we are separated from God, we are disconnected, we are sinners, into the truth that we are God, we are life, we are drops in the ocean of this vast experience. So I wanted to drop those little points in. And it's time for some Omashar. So Omashar, I'd love to hear, first of all, your thoughts on the topic, and then love for you to give us a little bit of your musical inspiration.
Well, gosh, holy smoke, I'm being stirred up at a really deep level between Andrew and Temple and you. And it's interesting because I'm feeling this anger coming up that we've been lied to for so many eons of time, and almost not shameful, but there's another word for it, that we bought it, that we believed it. Holy smoke, man. And so this is my passion coming up. It's like I didn't expect to feel this way, but I was brought up in an atheist family. But I always felt a leaning towards spirituality and nature. And when I was 9 and 10 and 11, I decided to sing in a Christian church. It was the Church of England in Stratford-upon-Avon in England, the Church of England, the church. And I guess that tuned me in. But my parents never pushed me to it. My grandparents never believed in anything apart from meat and potatoes. And it was nature that taught me about spirituality. And it was through nature that I felt the connectiveness to everything. And so with that, I'm going to sing a song called Come Back and Play. And it's a message from what I perceive to be the divine talking to us. And let's press a few buttons here to get me sounding shiny. Deep breath. Hand on your heart. In the beginning when we were one, life was fun. The human race had just begun. When you were children you laughed and played in the sun. So tell me now, where have you gone? Come back and play with the divine. You're part of me, walking through time. You didn't leave you in the dark. You are the jewel in my heart. We could never be apart. I yearn for you endlessly, a field of dreams in between. You are the children of the sun, all of you. The world awaits your point of view. So come back and play with the divine. You're part of me, walking through time. I didn't leave you in the dark. You are the jewel in my heart. We could never be apart.
Beautiful. I'm going to go to gallery review. Let's all give Omashar some love.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
love
you.
playing that song.
Yeah,
It's very pretty.
it's a good one. And a reminder, everybody, that we can support Omashar by buying his albums, going to omashar.bandcamp.com. And I hope that all of you have done that by now. Those of you that are regulars and those of you that are new. Omashar's music, every song is really inspired. He's clearly a channel for spirit to flow through in a wonderful, wonderful way.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get some more of Andrew in a moment, and we'll also have some more harp from Fanny. But I do want to go to the second part of my pre-record with Temple. And really enjoying all the comments coming into the chat box, and continue to pop your comments in. Your comments or any questions that you might have for Andrew. It's good to be talking about this. It's a very important topic. So here's a little bit more about what Temple has to say. So here we go. So there's the part of you that's the ego and the personality and reacting to the world. And there's the part of you that's tethered to higher self, to God's self.
Yes.
During those difficult years before you physically broke away, did you lose touch with the part of you that's always connected to higher self? Or did you always, even through the alcoholic time, even through the self-destructive time, did you always stay connected to that?
You know, when I wasn't intentionally connected, Scott, something would happen. Someone would show up. A little girl came up to me one time, and I think I was high as a kite. And she said to me, she said, I wanted to meet you. My mommy really likes you. You know, you're a master. So I would have encounters like that. I was at Black Mountain off of Highway 9 at the Light Center, knowing you've been there. And it was founded years ago by a nuclear physicist, and they had people, it was a dome, it's still there. I would urge anyone to go, but people would come and pray from everywhere. And they had a chakra room. So they had a lit room with colors of the chakra, and you would go in this little small room. And I didn't even know the lights were so bright. I thought it was in there by myself. And when I came out, a woman came from behind me and she said, you know, I'm here to give you a message that you are a great spirit of God. And I don't know, maybe hang in there, maybe keep going, maybe you keep your light shining, whatever. I was, 17, 18. So that being said, so when I was delayed going to college, a man at Michelin, I got a job at Michelin Tire. Well, thank heavens, because now I'm introduced to the European culture. what do you people do here in the States? You have a church on every corner, and what is this? And, you say you're friends in 5 minutes, and who are you people, But they just embrace me, because sexuality to them is an afterthought, like asparagus. Like, who cares? And so a safety net, so this web of crisis and hell was being pulled away from me, and the realization of me was coming out. And a man approached me, his last name Bliss. We're still the best of friends, and he invited me to a unity community. And for the first time, my vibe found my tribe. And so here I am, made it, survived myself. Get a t-shirt. I'm in a unity. I get to be friends with the minister. I went to everything they ever offered, still drank, but went to everything they offered. And she invited me to dinner one night. And I said, well, I may need to tell you that I'm different. And I think it's okay to use the word gay. And she said, well, where do you want to go eat? And I said, well, I just said I'm gay. And she went, well, what does that have to do with anything? That doesn't matter. In unity, God loves everyone. We're all equal. And that was it. I took the biggest breath I had probably had since the time I was born, coming out of my mother's womb. The big breath of life, like, And that's how the story went. And so it would be like that. And it still is. Every time, not to that level, of course, for sure. But anytime I've asked a question, I'll just finish with this thought that years ago, because like you, I'm just so committed to the conversation, and bigger than about me, but about, come on, don't accept this stuff. Don't let people herd you to not use your own mind and your own common sense and your own heart. Come on, you're always whole. You've never been broken, ever, 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 whatever. But I was going, okay, God, like, are we going to another level, or what are we doing? Or am I on the right path? I need an answer now. And I go walking across the street to the beach, and there was a man. I have it. If you ever want me to show your audience, then, because you can't make this stuff up, there's a man walking towards the entranceway of the one I use, the easeway for the beach, and he has on a burgundy shirt with Temple written across it. Obviously from Temple University. But he thought, this woman is cray-cray, because I go, can I get a picture of you? It's like, and I went, no, you just don't understand. I was in prayer today. My name is Temple, but anyway. Yes, that's the way it works if we pay attention,
All right, so here's another question for you. How do you balance forgiveness for the ignorance that you grew up in, that you see 45, 50 years later is still continuing? How do you balance activism for change, forgiveness, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, and within yourself? Like, how do you balance that?
It's an everyday practice. I have written about it a lot in my book, Being a Difference Maker, because I talk about the value of being an enlightened rebel. We don't get very far when we're angry and we're mad. We need the anger and we need to be mad. I mean, come on, some of the things that go on, I don't ever want my anger to be dismissed. People that want to work with me to erase their anger, I go, I don't want to work with you. We all need anger. It's what we do after the fact of anger that helps us be a difference maker. So I would say to you, it's an everyday balance of that, because if we are angry and we see that something needs to happen, there are little ways in which we can do something about it. So the easiest answer is we spend time thinking about what we can do something about. I will tell you, regardless as I made mention to you that I've always felt like I was an old soul. I always felt like I was tuned in and tapped in, whether anyone validated it or not. Often my mother would. But that being said, I still felt like, Scott, it was a big ask to ask my brother what I would be asking my grandmother. And this is where compassion comes in, is a big ask to ask her and my grandfather and all their parents before them to totally eradicate their stupid religious belief system to accept me. That was a big ask. Now in 2022, a lot of people can do that, or they're able to because the culture has allowed more breathing room for that to happen. But I knew that was a big ask. I will tell you that Fast Track, my book about energetic dying, coming out in 2014 through the editing process, I had written about my grandmother and the story that I just told you. And a psychic, I had a time with her, and she told me that my grandmother Lois was coming through. First time that it ever happened. My other grandmother, my maternal grandmother, talked to me a lot, but my paternal grandmother had never come through, because keep in mind, she's in eternal life and I'm in hell, So she came through, and she did say that she was sorry and that I did know what I knew, and she really wanted me to hear her heart. I will tell you, though, by the time that occurred, and I'm now in my 50s, it did not give me like, oh, I'm okay. My grandmother said I was okay. You know what it did? With all the love of my being, it made me happy for her that as a soul she had advanced.
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't need her approval anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't need anybody's. I had already came out on national television and said, this is it, baby, deal with it. This is it, and I'm not changing. Okay. So that's it.
I want to riff on a couple of things, and then I'm going to bring Andrew back on. But when we're going through a disillusionment period, or when we're going through a hard time, it is really important to be open and available to those messages from life, call it from life or from God or from your higher self, to have faith or to remain open. So I really appreciate that. And then also recognizing that even those ancestors who may have been less evolved, less advanced, more stuck in dogmatic thinking or old belief systems, I do believe that when the body dies, our ego and personality dies with it. And when we're back in, call it the astral plane, call it heaven, call it the spirit realm, whatever you believe it to be, there is a more expansive view. And I do believe that even ancestors who may have been very difficult when they were alive and in their personality, when they're in the bigger realm, they're there for us. They're there for us in beautiful ways. So anyway, a couple of thoughts, and I'm really eager to hear, Andrew, you're back on. Love to hear some of either reflections to what you saw or heard from Temple, or just kind of where we're going in our conversation, or some of the wonderful comments coming in our chat box.
Yeah. I mean, so I work with people who are healing from religious trauma, and especially a lot of people who are just questioning or coming out, or who have recently done so, but also people who maybe years later realize that, some of this stuff is really deeply lodged in and is coming out for whatever reason. And one thing that comes out a lot on Temple's talk is the issue of being gay, and for many people it's being a woman that often they find a lot of difficulties with in religion, just a lot of the patriarchy, and but sexuality is such a fundamental thing, and especially for people who are not heterosexual or binary or monogamous, that is heavily shamed and condemned in a lot of religious groups and a lot of fundamentalist groups. And it's just so tragic to see just how much this can affect someone at such a deep level. And what we see in our society is, it's just a devastating and tragic thing in how it can really cause so many unnecessary ruptures in families. And just a lot of these religions can enshrine bigotry and bigotrous ideas as if they were divine, and really kind of sort of teach the exact opposite as being the truth, really like the total reverse. I mean, presenting God as if God is this devilish being, as if God is this maniacal being, sadistically tormenting people and creating them in ways that are sinful or evil, and that they have to fight or suppress. So yeah, it's really a tragic thing. And one of the biggest issues that people deal with is how do I relate to people who are still in this belief system? Often when they're questioning, or now, a lot of us have family who are in these systems of belief, who might judge our lifestyles as evil or sinful, and the things that we value. And it's very difficult and can be very triggering. And so I really appreciate what Temple said about anger. The big thing that I work with people is accepting and integrating their anger, and 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 really coming out of the shame and the fear of being judged or punished or being bad for being angry, and often getting their anger, expressing it in a healthy way, dialoguing with it, listening to what it has to say, and sort of finding their boundary in that place, and then how to relate to other people. It's different for every person. A lot of people need to set boundaries and feel that they might need to take a break for certain relationships for a while, just because they need to do so for their own health and well-being. Others are able to set boundaries and say, I'm not going to relate to you if you're trying to evangelize me, or I'm going to walk away if we bring up this topic of conversation, and try to have a human to human connection. So there are a lot of different ways of approaching that issue.
Thank you. It's interesting how anger is coming up. Omashar talked about how his anger is coming up, and it's understandable. When we do have a big disillusionment, and I think that's a lot of what happens, is there's a disillusionment. It's understandable to get angry. Also, and anger is, again, like you said, it's not a bad emotion. It's a part of the natural human experience. It needs to be managed. And so it's helpful for people to have someone like yourself to work with them in managing their feelings, including uncomfortable feelings. And again, how often people have been taught that anger is bad, anger is evil, which goes back to, early attempts to control people. And let's face it, a lot of religion, a lot of organized religion has not been about creating an authentic spiritual connection. It's been about controlling people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit. I'm going to actually read a couple of comments and then get your feedback. Jay just wrote, "I'm angry that we killed the Indians and then came in and built churches to worship the Lord on their lands." Well, yeah. I mean, if we had integrated the healthiest native understanding of being connected to nature, boy, how much healthier Western civilization would be. Omashar writes, "I felt the anger arising within me around this topic. Actually, it felt like a wonderful passionate drive." Bonnie writes, I so relate with everything said this morning and Omashar's lyrics. It has spoken to my heart in such a way that tears keep flowing. I hear all of you. Charlotte writes, so sad how much harm has been done by religion. Gender is one of many confining limits placed upon our being. We are expansive, infinite spirits inhabiting a physical form. Love is love, and it can take many forms. And again, thank you to George and Reverend Jeffrey Coleman and Karen for all of your comments. The last one I want to read, again on anger, is from Pamela Laluz. Thank you for your views on anger. I think it's another thing that religious ideation has been given a bad name. It is so much more healthy to embrace all aspects of ourselves. So really appreciating everybody's comments. Thank you. Andrew, any reflections on what you've heard?
Yeah. I mean, with anger, it's an emotion that lets us know where our values lie. Our sense of justice lets us know where our boundaries are and when a boundary's been crossed. So it lets us know what's important to us and what we want to preserve and protect. And so, it can be a very powerful ally in that way if we really are able to listen to it without shame and without judgment. And also to do that in a healthy container and space, because again, anger can definitely be quite destructive as well. So there has to be that space where we're able to really tune into it and see, what can I learn from this? How can I ally myself with this, and maybe not be owned by it, but still listen to what it's a truth that it's trying to point me to, and a truth about my experience and about my trauma and my feelings. So there's that aspect. And I think this can be a very triggering topic, because a lot of us have been harmed in this way, or have been part of systems of harm and oppression. I know I was. So I think it's something to hold tenderly to, just as we're going on into our evenings, and that things might come up, and that's okay. And it's okay to be triggered, and in conversations and with people, and just to have some tenderness and compassion around that. But yeah, in terms of religiosity, there has been this dark thread of control and fear and domination. And part of what I do is to kind of dissect and break down especially biblical teachings, and to see where these threads took root, and how they're perpetrated and where they lie in the ideology. And so we do have a conquesting ideology, a perpetrative ideology that runs in a lot of scriptures, that can be very disempowering, and but that people will look to when they feel afraid, and when they feel powerless, and when they feel oppressed. That there's this champion warrior deity, and this community of saints who are protecting us and empowering us and giving us hope against this wicked, invisible, or visible force that's other than us. So there are a lot of reasons for why these kinds of things happen. And I think the more that we're aware of it, the more we can see it when it happens in ourselves too. And to remember that, as spiritual people, we're not immune from dogma either, or we're always learning, we're always coming out of our indoctrination. There are just so many layers to continually peel back. So I really want to do that in an open and humble way. And also to be asking that question, is there a way in which I'm closed, or maybe not fully seeing certain perspectives?
I'm really appreciating your humility, and also, yeah, how there is in our world, it seems like there's almost always a constant struggle between falling into a self-righteous us versus them, right versus wrong, good, bad polarization. Certainly there are certain political figures that really create a lot of that polarization. But then if we look at our long-term spiritual teachers, and spiritual teachers that are more contemporary, who we know what they've actually said, ranging from Mahatma Gandhi to John Lennon to Martin Luther King, and they all teach compassion. They all teach compassionate understanding. So there's always this opportunity. Am I going to fall into the us versus them camp? Or am I going to seek to understand that which is different from my race, my culture, my gender, my belief systems? I'm a big fan of Einstein, and I'm paraphrasing, but I always love the quote where he says, the true measure of intelligence is how quickly we can change our beliefs. And it's from a pretty bright guy. So I want to, we're kind of coming into our end, and just want everybody to know that Andrew is very available to work with people doing private coaching. And his website, again, I've put it into the chat box, but for those of you on Facebook, it's lifeafterdogma.org. lifeafterdogma.org. Definitely, everybody go in and do what I'm doing right now. Subscribe to his newsletter. He has a blog, Inspiring Psychological and Spiritual Wholeness and Healing Religious Trauma. And if you want to talk with him for support, you can schedule a free inner freedom session. And again, I put that into the chat box. Those of you watching outside of our Zoom room, if you go to lifeafterdogma.org, scroll down, you'll see where you can schedule a free session or join his Facebook support group. That's great that he's got a Facebook support group. I'm going to go to that real quickly. There it is. And of course, many of you, most of you are watching on Facebook. So there it is. So there's a lot of wonderful ways to get input and to meet other people that are in this inquiry, that are in this journey of healing. Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to share with people about your work or your services?
Sure. Yeah. It is. So I also, as a coach, I work with a method called internal family systems therapy, and that it's also known as parts work, where you really work with different parts of yourself. You might have a part that's judging yourself and a part that's angry at a different part of you and at a part that's confused. And we all have these different aspects and parts of ourselves that sometimes are conflicting, and so that method can really help to heal trauma and work with a variety of things. I really like it for religious trauma and a lot of different issues, and yeah, so I'd love to speak and to write about these topics, and right now I'm studying for a degree in Indian religion, so I'm learning Sanskrit and studying in that too, and working to integrate spirituality in a healthy, non-dogmatic way. So that's what I'm up to right now. And thanks for having me and for listening.
Absolutely. Are you familiar with Andrew Harvey? Do you know Andrew?
I've heard the name. I don't know personally.
Oh, I get to turn you on to Andrew Harvey. Andrew is one of my absolute favorite luminaries. He's been on this show many times. And Andrew's father was the ambassador, the British ambassador to India. And so when Andrew was a boy growing up, he had this very fascinating dual experience of British aristocracy and being raised by humble Hindu servants. And he fell in love with his Hindu nanny and Hindu people. And it started a lifelong interest in really understanding different cultures. He's a brilliant, Andrew's now in his 60s, but he went on to Oxford, brilliant scholar, and he learned the languages of Sanskrit and Aramaic so he could read the sacred texts in their most original forms. He's written 40 books in his life, collaborated with everybody from the Dalai Lama to a lot of other amazing authors. And much of his work is really getting a much more holistic view of scripture and spiritual teachers. You might enjoy his Gospel According to Thomas. You might also enjoy his book called A Walk with Four Guides, Jesus, Krishna, Ramana Maharshi, and Buddha, where he talks about, again, what they really spoke of in whatever texts we have that offer real quotes and the commonality of their message. Anyway, I could go on forever about Andrew Harvey, but definitely look him up. He's beautiful and a frequent voice. We actually played a pre-record from him on Friday night. So a
Great.
pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much, Andrew. I hope you'll come back and be on our show again.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for having me. You've got a wonderful thing going on here.
Yeah, it is. It's a wonderful thing and a wonderful group. So thank you for being with us. Well, we have two wonderful musical artists with us tonight. We've got Fanny and we've got Omashar. So I'm kind of thinking, let's do a little of both. I'd like to offer Fanny to play harp. And as she plays her harp, again, let's just digest all that we've learned from Andrew and from Temple and from the beautiful comments coming in. And then we'll close with Omashar playing whatever he feels inspired. So Fanny, before you play, any thoughts that come up for you about today's topic? Anything that came up for you?
I just want to say thank you, Andrew. That was so wonderful and formative. And the evolution that we've been through is totally miraculous, knowing where we're coming from. Such such dark eras in our pasts, we're coming from that, and now we are awakening to the light, and we are able to spread that light in gentle pieces here and there as we are more loving and kind, and people are getting love is our religion. So that's what I believe, that we are changing our world with our compassion, our light. And thank you so much for all the information. We are truly awakening, and we're blessed to be here at this time, because I know for me as a child, as an enlightened warrior, or an enlightened, like Temple said, she was an enlightened, what did she say? She was an enlightened something, warrior, not warrior.
Mystic.
Mystic, yes.
She's
So
a
here,
mystic.
yeah, so here we are, and we are open to change our world, and now we're able to talk about these things openly, even if we're not totally understood. But the world is awakening to this reality that we are pure God, divine beings. So music is God energy. So this is a little improvisation. Slay, 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 slay.
Oh, so it's wonderful, beloved Fanny. That's so beautiful. So
Thank you.
And hey, everybody, I put it in the chat box, but again, for those of you on Facebook, um, you can get Fanny on Bandcamp as well. And on Bandcamp, she is the Mystiques 1111, the Mystiques 1111. And usually she plays with her beloved partner, Vigari. And so there's some albums that they've got there together. And then also her Magic is in the Air. Um, so let's definitely support Fanny by going to Bandcamp and getting her records. And Fanny, you'll be back with us a week from today as well, I hope, yes?
Yes, I will be there for you.
Great, thank
Such a
you.
wonderful show to be bringing to the world. It's truly awakening our planet. Thank you so much. It's so important.
Pleasure, thank you. It's great to have you with us, Fanny. Yeah, next Sunday, we've got a special show planned. Abigail McBride, I just noticed my thing is happening. Abigail McBride, who is the wife of Jeff McBride, one of our favorite magicians, is going to be with us. And she plays the hung instrument. And so I thought it might be fun, her playing the hung, Fanny playing harp, Omashar, of course, here playing music. And Pamela Butters is here. Pamela LaLuz Butters. I've got to start getting it there. There she is. She is going to be one of our musical guests next Saturday night. And I just really want to make sure that everybody knows about our show next Saturday night. It's going to be a really special one. Join the Planetary Ascension. Deborah Giusti is coming back to co-host with me. And live with us, we're going to have the Twin Ray, William Henry, the Stargate people, Pragit and Julian, and an amazing woman, Vivian Chauveau, all leading us in what ascension really means, how to experience ascension. And so we wanted to bring in amazing music. Of course, we'll have Omashar with us, but Pamela LaLuz Butters will be playing music, and also Cornflower, beautiful, beloved Cornflower, will be with us. So next Saturday night's going to be a great, great show. And wait till you hear this woman sing. She's got an amazing voice, absolutely beautiful voice. So Pamela, we're really looking forward to you being with us next weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. We're going to have fun. What a honor to be with all of you. I just love this community. So it just all touched my heart so much. So yeah.
Community loves you too. She was at our Global Peace Tribe retreat in Sedona and did an amazing crystal bowl experience for all of us. And, speaking of next Saturday night, I know a lot of you were here last night, but just a brief reminder that I have reopened registration for our new winter season. And what I'm offering is for people that come in at a higher level. If you come in at $75, you can get a free ticket to our New Year's Day concert. And I've arranged once again for Kristen Hoffman and Cornflower to do a concert on New Year's Day, which will be a Sunday. It'll be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So what a wonderful way to start the new year with Kristen and Cornflower and a concert. Now you can buy tickets separately. The tickets are $23, but if you register for our new season, you'll automatically get a free ticket to the concert. And if you register at the higher level, for every $75, you can offer a gift subscription to a friend. So for example, Roger and Bonnie have already come in at a higher level, and they've bought several gift subscriptions for friends of theirs. Do that this week so that your friends that you're giving gift subscriptions to can join us for next weekend's shows. And again, the December 17th show is going to be very, very special as we have some of our favorite luminaries coming on. So what a wonderful introduction to the awakening world that will be. I'll be putting all of this into the chat box before we close out tonight. So please join us. We are going to do 3 more shows every week next year. And we are going to be shifting from Friday nights to Wednesday nights. So there'll be a midweek experience of the awakening world. And Trish will be joining us back as co-host every Wednesday night. So that'll be fun. And then I'll have people like Kristen and Larissa, Tangela, all of your favorites coming back on a rotating basis. This morning I was hearing from Reverend Deb Moldau and Ellen Steinfeld. They're going to co-host some shows next year. So definitely join us and let's grow our family. Let's get more people coming into the awakening world, because certainly, as you know, you're here and most of you are here every week. You know that we really are doing good stuff. We want to grow our audience. It's really important. And I need your help to grow our audience. So thanks for listening. All right. With that, we go to the way that we love to begin and end our shows. Beautiful, beloved Omashar.
Another beautiful show. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. I am going to sing the song that we've sung several times over the last year. And it's coming up to my year anniversary with the Awakening World, Scott. So that's pretty cool.
All right. Well, do you know when that was? When did that actually, do you have
It
a
was,
date?
I think around the 27th of December, or a little earlier, was my first thing. And I've worked out that I've been, I know you've done 7 million shows, but I've been on about 108, maybe 112 shows so far. Wow. Anyway, in honor of Reverend Temple, we're going to, this is when I used to be the music director for Unity in Hawaii. We used to sing this at the end, always. It's in the chat box, and please sing along with yourselves muted. And especially Reverend Jeffrey, who's neat. I'll meet you, mate. And then here, let's go. Let's see what happens.
And Reverend Jeffrey has a magic Christmas tree. I'm going to put the spotlight on him for a moment. So we want to acknowledge your magic Christmas tree there, Jeffrey. We're on gallery view, everybody. Twinkle, Omashar, and twinkle each other.
That's right. Twinkle, twinkle, little
Twinkle,
stars.
twinkle, twinkle. Look at all these stars. You are all stars in the Global Peace Tribe constellation. Great to see Jay Mayer back in the house. We'll have more light touch happening. Loved your video that we showed last night, Jay. Thank you for that. And
awesome to see Fanny's purple harp in the background there.
yeah, and isn't it great to have Fanny back playing with?
Yeah.
And give her love to Vigari. Give her love to Vigari. All right. Well, it's been a wonderful weekend. I really enjoyed all of our shows this weekend. So have a beautiful, beautiful week, everybody. Please, 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 let's grow it out. Let's get a lot of people coming to next Saturday night. And I look forward to all of our future connections with each other. Take care. And remember, we can make any moment sacred just by seeing the divinity in that person or that situation. God's blessings, everybody. Take care.